I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Our focus today is one of our communities in the area, Oronogo, and like many communities, it has a rich history and it's also planning for the future. Joining me, the Mayor, Ron Hall, and the Chief of Police, Chris Carriger. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Judy, for having us.
I know there's a lot of rich history throughout our region, so I think I'm going to start with that little bit of background about Oronogo. Some of our viewers may not be familiar. They've moved in here in recent years, so a little bit of history, strong ties to the mining history in the region.
It is extremely tied to the mining industry. There's so much to talk about. It was one of the major lead mining institutes around this part of the country during those days, and has made a name for itself because of that.
So it's grown changed throughout the years, the transitions. Chris, I know a lot of towns are facing these challenges. As the economy changed, the community changed as well.
It did, and kind of the way we started this is, we were real big back when it was a mining town. It got to be, as far as population and stuff, pretty big. And then as time goes on and the mining went away, it kind of withered down, and we want to bring that back to kind of where it was before with the growth that we've seen over the last several years.
You mentioned the growth. You have seen some tremendous growth as far as people moving there and building and living.
Tremendous growth. That's brought about by a few things. Oronogo is a bedroom community to Joplin, Webb City, and we understand that. But the things that have made it grow so much is there's so much that folks want to have live in a country environment or a country atmosphere, but still have the ability to quickly come into larger areas for other things that they do, and especially the school system has increased our population noticeably too. And
you're part of the Webb City School District.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
That's correct.
So then when we talk about the schools, that district growing as well, along with the communities in that district.
That's correct.
And tying that together. So you have made a decision, city leaders and others, to bring in some people to help you vision for the future. Tell me about how this came about to reach this decision.
This actually started before I was elected mayor of this year. The previous administration were the ones that contacted Drury College through Chris, and so I'm going to let Chris explain to you actually how it got started. He knows more about that than I.
Sure. So how do we get with a program working with Drury?
Well, it was about 18 months ago when I took over the chief of police and trying to listening to what was going on and the concerns and the issues that the city was having moving forward. I remembered the Webb City having the Drury University kids come in and help plan for their future in Main Street and King Jack Park. So we talked about it amongst the city leaders, and I reached out to them, and they came down and told us, here's what we can do, and we've kind of started that project to basically build our future, because to build a house you got to have a blueprint, and we need that blueprint so we know how to build the city for a future that will attract different people, more people going on, and give the residents something to do in town that maybe we're not thinking of that they would like to see.
So you mentioned students from Drury. For our viewers, they may, well, what kind of students? What are they studying? What makes them the experts? Or how do we?
It's an architectural kind of program. It's the community studies program. A lot of these kids go on to be engineers, architectural designers, and so forth. So they have at some point in that program, and I couldn't tell you specifics on the years, they get to pick a city, and they usually take 2 cities a semester, and then they get to help research the city, talk to the city leaders, talk to the people that have a vested interest, whether it be residents, business owners, and even in our case, people that live even outside the city a little bit, because they come into the city to do a lot of different things, or there is that potential. So then they take all those ideas and they try to come up with how you're going to get there, and here's the consensus on what the majority of the people would like to see, and then they try to help us with that plan on how to move forward and get there.
So they really help facilitate the discussions and research and tying
They
things
really
together.
do, and I think what happens with these youngsters coming from Drury is we want this to be the citizens and what they envision for the future of our city. Sometimes when citizens believe that this is something that is brought to them by the city government, sometimes they're not as anxious to embrace it and to become engaged in it. But when it's an outside entity like Drury College and these young people, we can start to feel comfortable that this is something that's coming from the citizens and not a governmental procedure.
And was it helpful to have, you mentioned Webb City, other communities that you can use as references? You know, how did they work with you and things like as you were researching?
It was. And before the mayor came into office, they came down and they brought some finished projects. They have a book. It's basically the finished project, and we got to see Webb Cities. I don't remember if it was the Main Street or the King Jack one now. I think Carl Junction and Carthage as well had one done, and we got to see those finished projects. And there's several cities in the Jasper County, Newton County area that have utilized this program. So we were, we thought what best way to build off, especially with Webb City and us being so close to Webb City, and this program already building that, then these young students can build off what those folks have already done, because we're really a sister community or small brother community or something to Webb City. So building on that and what they've been able to accomplish, I think is what we need to do at this point.
And Mayor, I imagine from a governmental leadership aspect, people are going to say, what is this costing the city?
Once again, that cost was approved by the last administration, and so there is a cost in it, but it's a cost that we believe that's an investment in our city that will be able to be played out in the next 10, 15 years, because this visioning program is actually looking 10 to 20 years and even further down the road for our city and what the citizens would like to see for the future. And one of the other things that these young people are doing is they are including a lot of young people in the committee work to see what these youngsters are involved with and what they envision for the city, so that when they grow up, if they choose to stay here, and that's one of the hopes, that they'll stick around and that it'll be what they want it to be.
So it's really intergenerational, people working across the generations on the project.
We reached out to the leadership groups in Webb City High School, because we're part of the Webb City School District. So we've got students from those type of programs that are coming to the meetings and being involved. Christ Church of Oronogo has a big congregation north of town. We reached out to their youth groups, because those groups are, when this is all said and done and we're 20 years down the road, those are the groups that are going to be benefiting from this as much as anybody else. So we definitely want their input on what things they would like to see, especially with technology changing and so forth. They're looking for, how can I move into a community that's going to better fit the needs of the times, versus back when myself and the mayor were growing up, we didn't worry about things like internet and Wi-Fi. So things like that are pretty big, and getting that information from these young people that we want to have move back into the communities once they're done with their college and they've started their business or working in their businesses. We want to know what we can do to build something that they can use for their futures as well.
Great. Well, I know we're talking about the future. Let's take a little look at the past as well as the present. You have some photos that you've provided, and
yes,
our crew will provide some opportunities to look at some of these pictures. And for the viewers, that maybe visualize a little bit of Oronogo and some of the scenes. So if we have the pictures, I'd like to call some of those up. Let's start with the first one. If we can call up the picture. Okay, so if you can explain to us what we're seeing for the viewers, what we have here.
That's one of our elementary schools. We have two there in Oronogo, Harry S. and Bess Truman. That actually there is Bess Truman School, where they go from, I believe, kindergarten to first or second grade, and then they'll move over to Harry S. until about fourth or fifth grade, and then they move on into the different schools in Webb City. So the folks that would be in the Oronogo, Alba, Purcell area that would be in the Webb City School District would go there up until that point. Our schools, Webb City School District totally is doing well, not only academically but athletically. So that helps draw people into that school district, and then us being what we are as a city, they maybe not necessarily want to live in the city, but like as the mayor said, a little more of the country style. So then that gives them that opportunity to be there and be in a closer to their elementary schools.
So as your community is growing, in the school district is also growing. So
It is.
I think if you'll go back to historically when Bess Truman and Harry S. Truman were being or built, that's when the population really exploded in the Oronogo area, because folks wanted to be part of that, and it was a younger starting age in those areas, and they wanted a great place to start their kids into a school system.
So surge of younger families with children and tying that out.
And you know, we talk about the population back in the year 2000 when I was doing research for the children, the students, so they could help build this project. About 2000, we were at 850 population roughly. We're pushing projected numbers about 2,800, possibly by the next census in 2020, 3,000. So, you know, that big of a population, the school districts, the schools are going to see enrollment growth as well. And I know we work pretty close with our schools on different safety features and safety things. So I know that we've talked about that with those folks and the growth that they've seen as well. So.
Right, so definitely going hand in hand. Let's look at another picture of what we have to offer for the. Now this looks like a little bit of history in this picture.
That's correct. That we just put that out on our the first newsletter that I put out. That's the Oronogo trolley depot, and there's a trolley that used to run through in the mining days, and I think it connected with Webb City and maybe even Joplin, and that was the depot at that time. Okay. It's been historically restored. It has electricity to it, but there is no electricity in it. But it is a beautiful building.
They've really preserved it over the years.
And I think, if I remember right, that in 2005 they redid the roof and the windows on that building.
I think that's correct.
And updated those. So we were actually in it 2 or 3 weeks ago and looking
Took
around.
some pictures.
So it's still in good shape.
It's in phenomenal shape for as old as it is, I think.
We're talking
Beautiful
probably
shape.
100 years. So yeah.
Beautiful
Let's
shape.
go on to the next photo then we have for the viewing. Now, of course, this is just a logo, but this ties into the schools. It's hard for people to see, but I think this is a sign of excellence.
And I believe this was an award that Harry S. Truman School received.
That's correct.
They have, over the last 2 years, received, I think this is the Blue Ribbon Award, but their academics at those schools have been top-notch. I know some of the faculty last year got to go to, I believe, Philadelphia to accept an award. So the education that they're providing the really young students and stuff like that is phenomenal. And I think it says not only well for the schools that we have in Oronogo, but the Webb City School District as a whole. And you know, we're very proud of those schools, and we do everything we can as a city, and especially as the police department, to help make that a safe environment and do everything we can to make it attractable for people to bring their young kids to go to school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go on to the next picture then. We have some more here. Another school?
And that's the Harry S. Truman
Harry
School. Yeah, that's the second. As they get a little older, they'll go to that school. So that's the Harry S. They again received, I believe, the last 2 years, school years, they received one award in 2017 or 2016. And then last year again another one. And I off the top of my head, I can't remember what the one they got last year is. So.
But really, the schools tie over to community pride as well. People who have pride in their schools, they have pride in their community, and tying those
Absolutely. And the values that that a lot of Midwestern folks have are extended through the school system, because it is extremely good school system.
Well, I know with Harry S. Truman, I was recently asked to come speak to the children on a characteristics of respect. So they pick a trait for each month, and they work on that, and they'll have guest speakers come in and talk about different things. So, and I think having those traits to work on and different things that they can gear the curriculum for, I think helps build for not only a better student, but a better person overall.
And carry them through those years at school. So let's look at another photo that we have then for the district. Now this one looks like you have a few problems with this one. A little fire? Explain what we're seeing here.
I think what we're seeing there, and this is one of the photos that was shared with me, that used to be the school in Oronogo, and I'll be writing about it in one of our upcoming newsletters. But it was, for the folks that are old enough to remember that, but there actually was a school where City Hall now sits, and that's it caught on fire, and unfortunately that was the end of it.
But it had been a very historic school, probably
exactly.
during the boom days of when you were a strong mining community.
And if I remember right, in talking to some of the folks that have been around town for a while and lived there and know some of the history, that was the second school that they had, and that was a high school.
Right.
And that's a good-sized school, just looking at the building and the size of the people down below. So they had a good-sized facility. Let's go on to the next photo then. A little bit of history as we're looking through here, and some more businesses on.
That was one of the old drugstores, and if I remember correctly, that building is still on that site. I don't remember exactly if that's
Is that the old grocery store?
I think that is the old grocery store building.
Okay.
The fronts of the two buildings, we have two what I consider really historical value buildings down in the downtown area, or what we consider the downtown area. One of them houses the post office, and a city library is in the works in one, and the other one is currently vacant, but the owners I know are interested in doing something with it. But there's a lot of history with that, and I believe that's was the grocery store, the dry goods store from back in the mining days.
Okay, let's go on to the next photo then. Where's baseball players?
I found that in some archive photos that we were digging in when we were talking to the jury students, and basically building the selling on which students wanted to come work for helping our city. And that was the Oronogo High School baseball team. And I want to say it was in the 30s or 40s, the picture that was on the back of the date was on the back. But I thought that was pretty neat. And
yeah.
Wow.
So it's important for the students working on the project to have that historical perspective before they can come in and help plan for the future.
And we still have some trophies at City Hall that the baseball team, and I think some other some academic trophies that students had won from when those schools were in place.
Great. All right, let's go on to the next photo then. This one's a little small, but I think it's looks like the inside of one of the schools.
That's the inside gymnasium that's at the Harry S. and Bess Truman schools.
Okay.
After the Joplin tornado, a lot of schools were able to get funding to put storm shelters in.
Right.
So this one actually doubles as a storm shelter. If we have any event where the storm sirens sound, our police officers and our emergency management personnel will respond to there, and this will be a safe zone for people to go if they don't have a basement or a storm shelter or anything, and they feel they need to go get out of those elements.
So this serves the community as well.
It serves the community as well.
People who live in town or live around the
Absolutely.
area can come to that.
And it's a very nice facility. We actually, this is where we hold our public input meetings for this program, which the first night was really overwhelming.
So a good gathering spot for people to have community meetings.
Really good, really nice facility.
Let's move on to the next one. This is exterior of a building in the city?
That's the building that currently houses the post office. Would be on the north end, and then on the south end there's an old shop they're working to become the city library.
Okay.
And then the Masonic Lodge has a stairwell going up to the top floor, and they hold their
this is another example of a building that has been preserved throughout the years.
Yes.
And then if you can't see it in that picture, but talking to some folks that have been around town, there's some signs on the side of the building that tie in some historical events from when the bank was robbed back in the mining days, or the payroll was robbed, and it's interesting to listen to the folks tell the stories and point at things and on those buildings and tell that part of the story.
The buildings have a story of their own. Let's move on to the next one then. If we have a group of people in this one.
This was a single corps group from the Air Force. They used to come to what's called Radar Hill in the city of Oronogo and train for different things. Radar Hill was known as the highest point in Jasper County. I think it still is.
It still is, and it is. It was just in our current newsletter that we sent out, and it was disbanded in 1968, and it was part of the SAC headquarters because it was, as the chief mentioned, it's the highest place in Jasper County that they could test the bomb dropping capabilities of the SAC aircraft. So it served a very good purpose, and but it has been completely disbanded now. And there was about 200 folks that were stationed there. The majority of them were out of the Oronogo Webb City community.
So it really played a big role in our nation's history at the
Correct.
time, in defense for the U.S. Yeah, any other pictures that we have here? We have one more of an interior one of the buildings. So
That was an interior, according to the back of the photo, of the old dry goods store.
Oh, okay. So, did you find it fun when you were digging these pictures out of the archives?
I did. I really enjoy history. So for me, it was fascinating to pull these old photos, like the old dry goods store and the baseball team, and even the one on the school fire, because they all tell a story about where we're at back at one point in our history, and we can build upon that for our future at some point.
Okay. Do we have any other photos? Let's see if we have any more here. I think, yep, this is what we saw earlier than just the historical photo of it, when it was actually the trolley station.
That's correct.
I think if I correct that, right there at the bottom corner, you can still see portions of the track. And I think that track even ran all the way to next city. So from
really the big region.
Covered the whole mining area for the most part.
So, okay, anything else on the pictures? Let's see if we, and there's the trolley itself.
There's the trolley.
Right, so. And when people talk about the trolley and some of the remnants of those tracks are not the tracks, but the mounds of dirt that supported the tracks.
And we used, Webb City has a trolley bus that they use. So when the students came down to tour the city for the first time, to look at the land and basically see what it was like and listen to a little bit of the history, we were able to utilize that from Webb City for part of the tour. So it's kind of played into our history a little bit, so it's kind of neat.
Neat, okay. And do we have any other pictures? Oh, and then we're back to the beginning with the school, I believe, where we started. So
that was a futuristic picture that I found of some things. I think that was when they were building the storm shelter portion.
Trying to plan for the future. Well, let's talk about the project and planning for the future. You mentioned community meetings. You said that you had that large room. The stages that you're going through. So the students came down. You had, I guess, first public session. People share their ideas.
Yes, and there's 2 more public sessions that will take place. One of them, the next one, is actually tomorrow night, Tuesday night. At 6 o'clock, and it's going to be at Harry S. Truman again.
Be at the Harry S. Truman,
so that'll be your
the storm
October
shelter
meeting,
building.
And once again, it is open to the public. This is not just for the committee itself. The students come down and they sit around the tables with anybody from the public that wants to come in and share their dreams, their ideas, and there'll be some times when nothing is off the table. We want to know as much as what the citizens want and see for the future of our city as they can. We may not all agree, and there's not an agenda here, but we just want people to share their ideas with us.
It's a chance to be heard, right? So you're going to have the sessions where people are sharing. Then the students, obviously, I guess you could say, have their homework. They have to go back and kind of put things together for you to propose, bring back. What's the timetable for that? As far as what
generally runs a full semester. They pick 2 cities a semester, and then they have however many students they have in the program, in that portion of the program. Each city goes and gives basically a sell for the city and talks about where where you want to be and so forth. And then the students are selected. Sometimes they get a pick. Sometimes we were lucky. I think out of the 12 or 14 students, most of them wanted to come work our city. Some of them had to go work the other city. Which is not anything against that city, but
so
they had the first public meeting was getting input. The second one is getting more input, plus showing based on the first meeting some of the ideas that the majority of the people were able to come up with on
so
where we want to be.
A little bit of feedback of what they've heard,
and then refine it from there.
Right. So I know a lot of people have interests in things in any community, quality of life, parks and recreation, those types of things. Are you hearing that as well from just the little bit of conversation you've had so far?
We're hearing a lot of that. Of course, several of the things that folks want to do is they would like to see more retail environment in our city so that they don't have to go to Webb City or Joplin or wherever to get some of these services. Restaurant needs are a lot of the conversation. Park and recreation, spot parks. Whether it's a skate park or a bike park or a splash pad like Webb City has, all of those things continue to come up in conversations. It just depends what the citizens bring forth and how it's received, and then what the committee decides to do with it as they look at what the long-term goals for the city are.
So you will have then a planning session setting goals for the future, timetables, 20 years from now we'd like to have, this in place by this year and so forth.
And that's kind of what and I'm not so sure it has a timetable, but the book, the finished project book, will always have the different ideas that they've come up with that you might want to, here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses, here's some things that the citizens would like to have, and some things that you have already in your community that you can work towards tying in those plans and those visions to that. So we have an actual planning and or a visioning committee, that will take once this is done and continue on to manifest that. And all right, we know what the blueprint is. How are we going to get there? Well, how are we going to fund these projects? What can we do to make these happen? So forth and so on. Kind of refine a little bit more, and then start the process of advising the city government, city council, of how to get there.
And that's an important step. Is you can have a nice big report. So this is a great idea, but how do we make some of these things a reality?
Yeah, I think that when the committee gets finished, they will have to bring it in the form of a resolution to the city government, so that it has the full support of the city government to get behind whatever their suggestions are to help them move forward. Because if we don't have buy-in by the city government, then all of a sudden it becomes an effort in futility, and we don't accomplish anything. And shame on us if we don't do our due diligence and move forward with something that the citizens have come to us and said, hey, these are some of the things that we would like to do, so here they are. We're giving them to you. Now you need to help this happen.
So it really sounds like a real teamwork effort. The citizens, the city government, the city, leaders working together. Okay, now where do we go from here?
Absolutely, and it's all for the citizens in the community. I mean, the city government, the police department, the public works. We work for the citizens of our community, and not only the ones that live there, but the ones that want to have businesses there or want to partake of the things that we have in the city. Like with Webb City, they have King Jack Park. And I know it's not just the Webb City residents that utilize King Jack Park, and that's kind of what we need to build towards as well.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank both of you coming today and sharing with the audience and giving us a little, preview of what might come to become. It'll be interesting to follow up in the finished study, too, as for what they come out with the results. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us, Judy.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.